Hello, everyone, and welcome to the live stream today here on our VantagePoint live stream channel. So welcome to have you guys today. So excited to be going over one of my favorite things in VantagePoint, which is scanning. So we're going to take a moment to go over our scanning, lots of different scanning opportunities today. And give me just one moment. I seem to have a little bit of technical difficulties here, so give me 1 second. Got a little bit of feedback or audio coming here on my end, so there we go. All right, otherwise that would just drive me crazy during the whole session. So let's go ahead and dive on in to our scanning and opportunity selection today. The greatest thing about VantagePoint is that not only can you use it to provide technical analysis and confidence in entering into your trades, but also how do you find great opportunities? I think that's the question I get asked the most is how do you find good opportunities in the software? How do you select kind of the best of the best? What's really expected to take off? We've done a lot of analysis together on some of these live training sessions where it's like, wow, how did we find those trends? And the stock screener, which we lovingly refer to as IntelliScan here in VantagePoint, is one of those tools. So we're going to go ahead and dive right on into that. Now, just remember, of course, anytime that we're going through our session today, the goal here is to provide education here in the software, education on using artificial intelligence to trade. So whether you're using the VantagePoint platform or a different platform, you can still get so much information out of these training sessions, because what this means for you is that you can use different tactics and different techniques that will apply to your particular trading style. So just remember, I'm not a licensed advisor, so I won't be giving you any trading advice, but we'll really be diving into how to utilize the technical analysis to, find better opportunities in this case for our session today. So let's go ahead and get to it. All right. So the first things first, let me go through and kind of help you all understand how to utilize the software, because it seems like we have a couple of users who I'm not familiar with your names. I mean, I don't know every one of our users, but most of them. So we have tens of thousands of users in VantagePoint. So give me just a show of hands of who, again, just type in the chat if you can. Tell me who is a VantagePoint user already, or who might just be kind of seeing VantagePoint for the first time. If you can let me know in the chat, that's really helpful. So that way I kind of know who we're talking to. If you need more information on VantagePoint or VantagePoint itself, you can go to VantagePointAIforecast.com. We'll drop that in the chat section below as well. So let's go ahead and just open up a couple of charts here. I know one that we were talking about before that we had looked at during our last live session together, not Daniel's, but myself, back on 5/5 was actually Wing. So hopefully, everybody got their fill, pun intended here, on this opportunity, because it did really turn into a great move for the month of May. And we can see that there are, a couple of key pieces that we want to look at when using the VantagePoint software. So just to keep it very simple, and that's the beauty of artificial intelligence, is it takes some very complex information, very complex processes, and boils it down to something very simple and easy to use. So let's review kind of what we were looking at initially on Wing for a great bullish or uptrending opportunity. And so in order to do that, we would really look for the blue line to cross the black line up here. So using that blue line crossing the black line, we would see that on, let's mark it with our date on our crosshairs, on 4/28, we actually had that bullish crossover, which the trend then turned green. So again, keeping that simple, green for up, red for down. All right. So this is not our only piece of confirmation though. Our additional confirmation, let me grab my pen here for us very quickly. Our additional piece of confirmation comes from the neural index down here. All right, so we have our crossover. We have a bullish crossover. We'll check that off the list, right? And then we have a bullish neural index. That's another point of confirmation that can give you confidence on potentially entering into this expected bullish trend. And then we would have our predictive differences, which were all trending up as well. So great. We have those points of confirmation. Now, the fourth point of confirmation, and I want you to keep that in mind, those 4 points of confirmation, because surprise, surprise, we're going to use those in our IntelliScan as well. But the fourth point is going to be our predictive trading range. And that's the predictive trade candle that actually forecasts the next day price expectancy. Do we expect a higher high? Do we expect a higher low? Basically, are we expecting price action for the next day to be bullish? But then on top of that, what is the range? How far do we expect it to come down? How far do we expect it to go up? And it's just incredibly accurate. So you guys will see for yourself here in just a second. So those are our 4 points of confirmation. Again, keep those in mind. Now, I'm going to use this chart again because I think it's key to also understand the different types of trends that we see here in the markets. Are we looking at a potential reversal? And again, keep these in mind as we jump back into the scanning portion of this and identifying the opportunities, because every trader is a little different. So, one trader might be looking for a reversal type opportunity where we're trying to identify bottoms. Another trader might look for breakouts in a current trend. And so helping you to identify these types of opportunities is IntelliScan. And that's, again, where it's probably my favorite part of the software. I can't say that enough because it's just so awesome. And you guys will see that here in just a moment. Do we have any current users who, of course, are using IntelliScan as well? Any questions on IntelliScan? That, again, IntelliScan is our screener. So I'm just checking the chat here. Perfect. All right, Barry, thanks so much. Glad to have you guys here. All right. Kathleen, you too. Perfect. All right. Good. I'd just like to keep an eye on the chat and, throughout the session here as well. So go ahead and type in any questions that you have as we go through our assessment today and through the IntelliScan. And I'll probably ask for some questions a little later on as well. So let's identify these types of trends. So again, one would be looking for kind of a bottom here, right? So we can identify where something is reversing out of its current trend, and this would be the identification of a reversal. All right, and then of course we do have a continuation trend as well, where we have something that is continuing to come out of, continuing on its current trajectory, right? Continuing in its path, right? In its path upward in this case. Now we can have those trends to the upside or to the downside. You could have a bullish reversal, which is exactly what we're seeing here, where we saw things coming out of bearishness and into bullishness. So basically coming from a downtrend into an uptrend. Now, who would prefer to identify trends earlier, right? Those are going to be the types of opportunities you probably want to look for, right? Yeah, absolutely. So very good. Yes, a lot of you are looking for those earlier entries. And so again, keep in mind the placement of our indicators at this time. And so we can see then, for those of you who want to identify breakouts where maybe we've had a recent pullback, if you missed this initial portion of the trade, okay, well, does that mean that it's over? Does it mean that you still can't make money in that market? Not necessarily, right? It means that you may want to wait for a pullback or a bit of weakness here before a nice breakout or bounce off of or coming out of that small pullback there, or maybe even a bounce off of support or resistance. So lots of things we can do with the IntelliScan and the scanning feature here in VantagePoint. Now, keep in mind, when I say IntelliScan, that's our stock screener. That's our scanning tool here within the software that's actually going to utilize these predictive data points to find these different types of trends. And so if we, let's see, I'm going to just pull up another asset here for us so we can take a look. And of course, I'll always ask for ticker symbols along the way, but let's take a look at another trend as well. We can switch over to any of our crossovers. So let's go through our crossovers together. Now, our predictive crossovers are going to give you the trend expectancy on several different time frames. All right, so as we walk through our next chart, here you can see that the short-term crossover, this is going to be a very sensitive crossover. So those of you who are like, very short-term, quick movements in and out, maybe 1 to 3 days, the short-term crossover is probably going to be something you're going to be paying very close attention to. All right. So with the short-term crossover, we would be looking for, again, that blue line to cross over the black line with the trend signaling green for a bullish expectation. Now, if you're trying to short the market, we would just look at that opposite, and we would just look for that switch to the downside here. So let's look at our current trend though. So we'll keep things relevant here. Don't worry, we're going to get to some shorting and some bearish trades here a little later when we screen for those and in our IntelliScan. So as we see the blue line crossing over, again, we're going to use confirmation here, never just relying on one indication, on one piece of information to be the end all be all for our trade expectation. We're going to use confirmation. Confirmation, I'll say it again, is confidence. Who doesn't want to be more confident in the trade, right? I know that's a rhetorical question. It should be. Everybody wants to be confident in the trade and the decision that they make. And so in order to do that, again, we'd look for our crossover. We have a bullish crossover. We would look for our neural index to be green. That's the price expectancy over the next 2 days. And we can see that we have that here. We'd also be looking for our predictive differences to be coming up as well. And we do also have the predictive differences trending up or in a bullish position as well. Now, that's the short-term crossover. You can see there was a little bit of volatility that had happened. Anybody seen some volatility in the markets recently? I would imagine so. Wouldn't you like to better navigate through that? I would hopefully imagine so, right? So let's continue on our next crossover. So our next crossover is slightly less sensitive. That's going to be our medium-term crossover. That's because it's kind of right in the middle ground between our short-term crossover and our long-term crossover. So the short-term crossover, as I mentioned, is just a 1-day trend expectancy, very short-term. The medium-term is slightly longer. That's a 2-day trend expectancy. So notice once we switch over to our medium-term crossover, this is going to smooth out the line a bit. Oh, I think I hit the short term instead. Let's go to the medium term. So using that medium term, we can see our trend is now slightly smoothed in our chart. Now we can see we do have a crossover here on 410. That's our bullish crossover confirmed with our neural index down here at the bottom. And again, all three predictive differences coming on up as well. All right. Now, as we see progressing through this trend, our medium-term crossover stays bullish this entire time. And this medium-term crossover is really designed for that swing style of trading. That's what VantagePoint was specifically built for. So our default here in the software is the medium-term crossover. But again, there are adjustments for shorter styles, that 1 to 3 day trade setup, or even potentially longer term as well. But looking from a swing style or kind of a position style of trading, we can see that the medium-term crossover helps us to navigate through even some of that volatility. Now, with that being said, it's always nice to know when you should expect a little bit of weakness, but not have to worry about it too much. And that's what you're using both indicators together can help you do. So as we see, we're coming right on through to the most current reading for today with the projection that we saw happening today in the markets. And we can see that we were still expecting a bullish movement coming from this trend. And so confidence in potentially staying in that position, of course, that's position management, but using that medium-term crossover, that's a 2-day. Looking at the long term, well, here we go. This is going to be even slightly more conservative. So notice we've worked from the most sensitive to the most conservative of the crossovers here, using our long-term crossover now maybe if you are kind of more of that longer term position style of trading, the long-term crossover can be very useful in identifying a little bit more conservative positions for you, a little bit more confidence using not only our points of confirmation, right, but also all of your crossovers simultaneously. Do you have a crossover on the short term? Do you have a crossover on the medium? And the long as well can help you really navigate through that. Yes. All right, Maydew. Absolutely. We're getting to that. I want to make sure that everybody understands how to find these crossovers. So specifically, we're going to screen for these types of crossovers. And what type of trend would this be? Kind of pop quiz here for you guys, because in reality, we're coming out of a bearish trend, and I'll switch over to our triple cross. For those of you who are not familiar with the triple cross, this can help you really identify where we start to see a shift in integrity of the trend. So notice our triple cross indicator is actually 3 different predictive moving averages on the screen at the same time, and it's evaluating the relationship and the strength of the trend based on those predictive moving averages. So if we notice here, you can see that our triple cross remains bearish this entire time until we cross over and we actually get 2 closes above that triple cross long. Our triple cross turns green, and then we can confidently manage that bullish trend moving forward. So that'll also be a key component of our scanning as well. So remember these crossovers as we get into the scan. In fact, let's do that now. I think we've gone over our indicators. We're looking for confirmation, right? We want everything to be in alignment. We want all parties to agree, so that way we can move forward, kind of skipping down the path happily along in the current trend or in a new trend as well. So creating a scan is pretty simple. I'm actually just going to come up to, remember I told you guys it was IntelliScan, right? So we're going to come up to IntelliScan. I'm just going to click New IntelliScan because we're going to build these together. All right. Now you can store saved scans in the software as well. So if you have a scan that works really well for you, make sure you save that. But today we're going to use our new IntelliScan and create one together. All right, so as we open up our IntelliScan, you'll notice that we have our crossovers in the scan. Surprise, surprise. I wanted to teach you guys about the crossovers before we scanned for them, so you knew why we were looking for the indicators in a particular format or setup or trade setup for your specific opportunities. All right, so you can see we've got the short-term crossover. Remember, that's our one-day trend expectancy. All right, then we can also see we've got the medium-term crossover. That's the 2-day. The long-term is our 3-day. The triple cross, right? That's our most conservative view, looking for strength and integrity within the current trend. And then, of course, we have our neural index, right? That's our neural index right down here. That's that red and green banner towards the bottom of the screen. And then, of course, we have our predictive differences. These are going to measure the strength of the trend. So I'm going to put an S right here. Well, I'll try to write this out. If you guys can read it, that'll be good enough. All right, so strength of the trend. When you are entering into a new trend, you probably want a lot of good strength backing that trend. You don't want to enter into a weak trend. You want to enter into a strong trend. So we can use the scan to help find those types of opportunities. Then, of course, we'll look at the predictive trading range. That's that predictive trading candle. Well, if you're entering into an opportunity, do you want things to go up the next day? Well, if you're taking a bullish position, you do. Maybe if you're entering into a bearish position, you probably want things to go down the next day. So we'll use the predictive trading range to identify opportunities based on the artificial intelligence that will help us find those types of opportunities. Now, these two down here, I'm going to put a little star by these, because these aren't necessarily going to help you with your strategic setup of the scan, but what that's going to do is help refine the opportunities. So we're going to get to that now. Let me just erase some of my drawings here. All right, perfect. Now, how do we set up the scan? Well, first, let's start with our short-term crossover. Would anybody disagree? And again, let's set up a bullish trend first, since our markets are very bullish. Over the last several weeks now, right? So take into account what the current market conditions are as well. That's always going to be important. In fact, that really is the first step in scanning, is understanding your market conditions. So I hope everybody is already doing some sort of market outlook or market overview before you start looking for new opportunities. Because ideally, you'd want to find opportunities that are moving with the market. So let's take a look at the short-term crossover. Of course, we would want the short-term crossover going up. So we'll just put a U for up. You could also use the drop down. We make it super simple here. So you could use the drop down or just put a U. Either one will work. That's going to identify up trends for that particular indicator. So I'm going to switch over our views down here on the chart. So that's going to look for our short-term crossover to be in the up position where the blue line is above the black line and the trend is green. All right. Now the medium-term crossover, same, we're going to set that to up as well. Use the drop down here. And using that medium-term crossover, that's going to look for an opportunity where the medium-term crossover is in the up direction. All right. Now, again, same with the long-term crossover. We're going to look for up, the triple crossover up. All right. So we're walking through our short, our medium, our long, and our triple crossovers to confirm that the types of trends we're looking for are in fact bullish, are in fact confidently bullish based on the predictive analysis in VantagePoint. Okay, so now let's set this neural index trend to up. Let's set our short-term predictive difference trend to up. Remember, that's the strength, guys. So we're looking for short, medium, and long-term strength, all in the up direction. Our predictive trading candle, do we want that going up? I would assume so, right? For a bullish trend. Now, volume, here's where you can, you can really strategize around this. Does anybody know what the purpose of scanning based on volume is? Yes, no, maybe so. Okay, I've got a couple of answers coming in. All right, liquidity, yes. So volume is going to help you better understand the liquidity of the asset. Is this asset liquid enough to get in and out? And that's very important, especially in a swing or shorter term style of trade, to make sure that an asset is liquid enough. That essentially means when you're ready to buy, there's somebody ready to sell. And when you're ready to sell, there's somebody there to buy. So you can get in and out of that asset very quickly. It is very liquid, in other words. And so for volume, there's a couple of different baselines you might use. You may have heard a couple of maybe 1 million, maybe 3 million, maybe 5 million. This in particular volume references trade volume. So this is number of shares traded per day. So what I'm going to do is actually just select greater than or equal to, right? And here we have our IntelliScan, right? We're looking for all of our crossovers to be going in the up direction. So again, I had just clicked on shop. So you can see I just opened straight from the IntelliScan. I opened up shop. It populates right down here in the lower portion of our screen. So we can identify the chart and look for the opportunity. So now we can see our short-term crossover. I'm going to switch over to that short-term cross. So we can see that that is actually trending up as well. All right. Oh, thanks, Maydew. We appreciate the love so much. All right. So I'm going to switch over to our medium-term crossover, and our medium-term crossover we can see is up as well. Our long-term crossover also up, and then also our triple cross is confirmed in the up direction as well. So we can see really quickly how we're able to identify really great opportunities here within the software so efficiently. I mean, this took us less than 5 minutes, even with our little technical difficulties here. Now, again, this is where you can also select close price. Maybe you want to look for assets that are, I don't know, maybe greater than 10, right? So let's put in greater than 10. All right, so greater than $10. Oops. Hang on. I'm sorry, I put less than. Wow. There we go. Let's get the right sign. All right, so greater than $10. We can even open this up slightly here. Again, very easy to really customize the IntelliScan to your specific trading style or setup per se. All right. Now let's reverse this. We could also look for reversal type trends. Now, I'm not a big fan of reinventing the wheel. So if we already have a scan open, this would be more of a continuation scan. Let me clarify, because the scanning type, the type of trend that you're looking for, is important. And we're supposed to go over 5 today, so we're going to get to all of them. But you can see this would be a continuation. Now, this is a trend that has started and is expected to continue. All right. So if you're looking at the major markets, and we'll just do a quick assessment here together here. Let's just pull up the SPY. I'm sure everybody would love to see what the expectation was. What was the AI telling us about the SPY today? So anyone questioning why we might have looked for a continuation type of trend first? Because the major markets are trending in that direction and have been for quite some time. So let's be strategic about the way that we scan, and not just scan for every type of opportunity. Why not follow what the market's doing, right? That's smart opportunity selection. So when we look at our crossovers here on the SPY, we can see that VantagePoint, I mean, gosh, we forecasted this here back here on 423, right? With the crossover and confirmed bullish trend. Again, looking at our predictive differences, I'll even pull this up for you guys here for just a second. Here's your predictive differences. Strength coming in. We had a bullish crossover. We also had our bullish neural index, and our predictive trading range was up on that day as well. So if we go to the medium term crossover, here we also have confirmation of that bullish trend. And then we also have our long-term crossover, again, current day and where we forecasted this previously. So if you want to know how to get into these trends earlier, then artificial intelligence, VantagePoint's AI can help you identify these trends. Now, current day, how do we know whether or not things are expected to continue in this direction? You know, we hear a lot of talks of tariffs and things like that, but with this sort of 90-day reprieve that we have, there's a fairly positive outlook on the markets. But we didn't have to wait for that. VantagePoint told us that weeks ago. And that's the benefit of truly trading with true artificial intelligence that looks at the markets as a whole. And by whole, I mean as the entire world, right? That's the power in VantagePoint, is that we're looking at this global market analysis and really identifying these trends much earlier than what you would have to wait to hear the news, right? So let's take a look at the triple cross again. This is also bullish currently. So this is going to help guide your scanning. This is going to help you identify opportunities that are moving with the market. Why? Because we're looking at the market conditions and then scanning for types of opportunities that are going to flow with the market rather than trying to trade against it. Right? Are there opportunities that, counter trend trades? Sure, absolutely. There's always going to be different types of trends, but stack the odds in your favor, right? If the markets are moving in one direction, find opportunities that would match up with that movement as well. So, all right. Short term looks short. You'll have to elaborate on that one for me, Gordon. Okay. So yes, so let's take a look at, the short term. Gotcha. I'm reading the chat here. Short term looks short, meaning the short term is rounding over, or are you referencing the predictive differences? I bet you're referencing the predictive differences. And yes, that would mean that we have some short term possible weakness coming up. But notice our crossover hasn't switched over, right? So our trend expectancy is still bullish. Now, would we be expecting some potential short-term weakness in the markets today? It's a possibility, right? And I'm pretty sure that possibility took place, especially earlier today in the markets. So if you saw the bullish trend with some potential for some shorter-term weakness, right, would you have been able to navigate through that better without getting emotional about where the market started out today? I can gather you probably would, right? And many would, because that's the trick, is and really that's the key, is navigating through the markets and trying to eliminate as much emotion as possible. And the best way to do that is to look at the facts, right? When we look and are faced with the facts and the data, it's hard to argue that, with emotion. All right. So yes, we were expecting some potential shorter term weakness today in the markets. I'll pull that down here now so you guys can see. But overall, still our trend expected to go up. So that's why we set up this continuation scan, right? Because it's trending with the markets. Now, if you wanted to create a scan that would look for those reversals, those earlier identifications of the trend, then you may focus on something like your short and your medium term crossovers. So I'm actually just going to remove the headings on our long and our triple cross. We could even put these to down. Well, let me remove our close price because that might take out some of our parameters. And some of you might trade things below $10, and that's fine. If you're looking for lower priced assets, fantastic. That's your trade style. That's your trade setup. Go with it. If it works for you, just make sure that that's a part of your trade plan and that you're using the scanning capability accordingly here, right? So you can really pinpoint opportunities that work for you. So we could even set this to down here, and we can see now the long-term crossover. We have only two that really give us this sort of fresh reversal type scenario coming in. And that would be based on the short and the medium crossover. So if we hit the short-term crossover, I'm actually just going to put a line here right on the short-term crossover. Then I'm going to put our medium-term crossover on, and I'll drop a line just boom right here on our medium-term crossover as well. So we can see that they're about a day apart, right? Now, if we set that long-term crossover on our screen, well, we actually had our long-term crossover here. All right. So in this case, we had everything happening within a couple of days. So nice, good strength here. Oftentimes there will be a progression where it'll be the short followed by the medium, followed by the long term as well. And when they all cross over at one time like this, great, we have even more strength, even more confidence as well. So that's also a very good sign happening there. And then, of course, if we switch over to the triple cross, this triple cross takes a little bit more time to switch over to that green, and that would have happened right over here. So if we leave our long term open, right, because we can see that could be either one or day here or there. But if we switch our triple cross to down, that really leaves us with kind of one type of opportunity here with that reversal state in mind. Now, why could that be happening? Anybody want to guess? It's a good possibility that it's because most of the markets have been trending up. They're in this bullish continuation phase of the markets. That's where the markets are trending. If you were to look at the NASDAQ as well, I mean, we did the SPY, but you could even look at the Qs for the NASDAQ. Here, this will be the ETF that follows those assets on the NASDAQ. So a derivative, are we in a reversal or are we in a continuation? So identifying what types of opportunities to start looking for first is oftentimes done by looking at your general market conditions. All right. So let's take a look at some other types of scan, maybe some short scans as well, because even though a large majority of the markets are trending up right now and they have a positive outlook, there are markets that are also shifting to the downside. So when should you be aware? When should you, maybe keep a closer eye on things is when things start to shift to the downside. We can identify that earlier as well using the artificial intelligence. So does anybody short the market as well? Maybe that would be really dependent upon your trade strategy, right? If you're looking for a reversal type scenario, that earlier entry, down here, if we look at like an earlier entry, or we go back to the identification here where we were looking before, I think this is where you had your question. So if we look at that earlier entry, here is where we had our bullish crossover. A newer trend that's just being established is always going to be a little bit riskier, right? But as long as you can assess that risk and have a plan of action to mitigate that risk, right? Maybe you take a smaller position size initially. Maybe you put on a tighter stop loss. Maybe you monitor it very closely. There are plenty of different risk management strategies that you can utilize to help minimize some of that risk exposure in a new trend. Think about it for a second. Anything that's just starting to develop, anything that's brand new, is a little bit more sensitive, right? So again, that's the same thing with the trend. When we see a new trend just beginning, that trend can take some time to actually manifest into a very strong trend that has integrity. All right. And when that happens, that's usually when our triple cross switches over. So again, not giving you any trading advice here, but just a different way to use the indicators and to better manage your position and your risk simultaneously is to use your crossovers, maybe identification of an early entry like we have on 411 here. But then once you see things starting to move in your favor even further, right? So on 414, we've got full crossover here and a triple cross as well. Then moving on, we have our full crossover here, 414, same as the long term. So that would tell you, okay, now we've started to really move in a direction of strength for this bullish trend. In other words, the momentum has started to pick up. The trend is starting to generate some integrity. Maybe you have a little bit more confidence. So if you want to add to your position at that point, you could do that as well. Or if you are more conservative, maybe this is the point where you enter. So you have to decide that for yourself. But that's the beauty of VantagePoint and the IntelliScan, is that we can customize these types of opportunities based on the individual trader and the trade styles and strategies that you yourself utilize. So that's for everybody. But this would be a reversal type of opportunity. So let's reverse this now, right? Let's look for opportunities that may be shifting to the downside. So all we have to do is reverse. So what's up, we'll change to down. We'll do this very quickly. And what's down, we'll change to up, right? So if we're looking for something that's been in an uptrend for quite some time, right? But everything else is starting to shift to the downside. This is where, if you're in a bullish trend on any of these assets, you might be very, very cautious, or you might decide, this looks like maybe a good potential opportunity to short, right? So there's a couple that we could look at. I'll just open up. See, here's the cool thing here. I can just highlight the assets that I want to see, right click, and then just simply open chart. So if we do that, let's see. Oh, there we go. All right, so if we switch over here, we can even switch over to our long term. Oh, hang on. I think that I might have done something incorrectly in the scan. Yep. Sometimes it's better to start over. There we go. All right, so everything to the downside. Let's set our short-term crossover to down, our medium-term crossover to down, long-term crossover to down, and our triple cross to up. There we go. That's better. All right, so if we look here or here, we can actually identify opportunities where things are shifting back to the downside. We can even look at target. We can see that was up and now coming on down. Now, if you want earlier identification, we could also shift that long-term crossover to up as well. Let's look at ECL. And again, this is where we get that earlier identification here. All right. So for those of you who are asking for earlier indications, then you would want the long-term crossover set to up and the triple crossover set to up, with the short and medium being the most sensitive here. Keep in mind that the short and the medium, these are going to be more sensitive. Long and triple crossover are going to be more conservative. So we'd set these earlier indications to already be crossed over to the downside, with the long and the triple cross still potentially being up. Now, what you can do is verify then that these trends are moving basically in the direction of your favor. In this case, we'd be looking for a movement to the downside. So we can see that the short-term crossover here has already shifted to the downside. Our medium-term crossover is down. And then, of course, our long-term crossover has not yet shifted completely, but we can see that these two lines are squeezing in on each other, which means we are seeing some potential weakness. Look at your predictive differences, guys. Of course, we do want to make sure that we're checking our neural index, our predictive differences, and then our predictive trading candle as well. All right. So again, it's all about confirmation. We're never just looking at one indicator all on its own. And here in the scan, we're using several indicators to find different types of trading setups. All right. And different trading tactics, right? That's the beauty of the artificial intelligence, is helping to identify this weakness ahead of time. So if you were in a bullish trend here, you may have considered the fact that we are seeing some extreme weakness and some potential shift to the downside. So what would you do there? Position management, increase maybe your stops, tighten up stops, or if you do short the market, then maybe you would look at this as an opportunity to short as well. All right. And then, of course, to switch that over all to the down, and this was the first one that I had did, and I apologize. But we can see now that we do have also opportunities where things have been moving consistently to the downside. And this is going to help us better see our opportunities for down markets. And this is a continuation. So something that's been kind of down for a while. We're on a 3-month time frame, but if we back this out, guys, we can really start to see the impact of these trends here. The IntelliScan is just identifying these earlier on. Now, of course, we have everything down here, so we'd be looking for markets that have been going down for quite some time. All right. Now, that's 4 different types of scans that we created, right? We actually created 2 different types of reversal scans, one that reversed to the upside, one that reversed to the downside, and then we looked for continuations of both of those as well. Now, if you, let's switch this on back to, and of course you can save each of these scans individually to make it really easy when you want to scan for a certain type of opportunity. But let's go with our continuation scan, since our markets are in this sort of continuation bullish trend, which is nice to see after quite so much time to the downside. But here we can now see, let's open up some of these opportunities. In fact, one that populated on this scan, we'll find it down there in a little bit, but would be new. So if we look at new, we can see our trend that is continuing to go in that favored bullish direction here, because that's the type of opportunity that we were looking for. Here we also have, let's see, PKG, right? PKG is another one that is continuing to trend on up. And we have more of a reversal here type scenario. So if we switch over to this long-term crossover, we can see that even the long-term has crossed over, helping us to navigate through, especially during times of consolidation here, where see how this long-term crossover remains down. And then we can switch over even to the triple cross, which here we can really see this position management come into effect, where we are using this darker triple cross long as a level of resistance here. So notice we come up and we hit this resistance, and it comes on down. Hit this resistance. This was a new resistance level established. I actually do have verified support and resistance on my screen here. So we can see some of these pivot points throughout the trend to help you manage the position, more efficiently. But the triple cross actually remains bearish this entire time until recently. And that's why this would have shown up in the scan, is because we have a fresh move on the triple cross. And in fact, we actually have 2 closes above that triple cross long. So now what you can view this as is really a breakout of this bearish trend. So this would be kind of that more reversal type scenario where now we're above the triple cross and we're expected to possibly gain some strength here in the trend. Now, when we got our crossover, of course, we'd want to look down at our neural indexes. We had all of our, 4 points of confirmation in alignment as well. So again, just the power here in identifying new types of opportunities for really any trader. It doesn't matter what style of trading that you or what your setup is. If it's a swing style of trading, position style of trading, shorter term, use the artificial intelligence to help you navigate through not only the entry, but the position management, and then also the exit as well. So scanning is really just the start of where VantagePoint can really make a huge impact, in your trading. And it's just so incredibly powerful. So I'm happy to share with you guys today. For those of you, again, who are not, VantagePoint users, don't forget to visit our site. I know we put it in the chat a few times now, that VantagePoint forecast, VantagePointAIforecast.com. And again, we'll drop that in the chat later, if not right now, to make sure that you guys know where to find more information on VantagePoint. There we go. Yeah, VantagePointForecast.com. Thanks, guys. And don't forget also to like and subscribe. We love to share as much as we can with our users, but also with others that might not have known that something as powerful as VantagePoint and this predictive artificial intelligence forecasting software is out there. So, help us spread the news and help other traders just be more successful in the market. So let's get to our final type of scan today. And, I went back and forth on a lot of different ways to scan. There's things like volume and volatility that we can scan on. But I thought also with current conditions and where we're heading in the markets, it might be a good thing to take a look at seasonality. And so what we'll do is I'm actually just going to pull back open the SPY just so we can take a good look at the SPY itself. I'm going to remove some of my little drawings here so that way we can get a good assessment. I'm going to pull our market up so we can see a little closer. All right, so here what we can do is we actually have this really, really powerful indicator that was developed by a guy you might know. His name's Larry Williams, that handsome guy down there. If you ever see him, let him know I said that. All right. And I'm going to add on our Larry Williams seasonal pattern to our chart here. All right. So our seasonal pattern can help us to better understand what this market typically does during this season. All right, now we can also expand our chart out just a little bit. We could even just put on like strike prices or Fibonacci levels. There's a lot of really great predictive indicators that we have here in the software. I'm just gonna, we'll just leave those on here for a second. So when it comes to the seasonality, we can see that we are really starting to kind of gain some strength from a seasonal standpoint as well. We could see that our seasonality kind of bottomed out here, down here around 4.8. And we start to see this seasonal shift back to the upside. So we're really looking at the directional component of this Larry Williams seasonal forecast here. And with the additional confidence that seasonality can help you with, we can also get a better understanding of what to expect moving forward, especially in markets that do move very seasonally. So, there are several markets. And let me do this because we have about 5 minutes left. Let me ask, are there any ticker symbols that you guys want to pull up today that you want to take a look at? That's always a good question, and I want to ask it now so you guys have some time to enter those, and we'll have some time to review very quickly. Not just based on scanning, but also based on any of the indicators that we saw here today. We can go through and do a quick live analysis with our indication. So I'm going to leave our Larry Williams seasonal indicators on here, and I'm just going to save this as the new default. So anytime that I open this chart, it's going to open up just the way that we see it. So we like to make it super simple. All right, so save a default, and then it'll open up that exact way each time moving forward. So let's take a look at some other assets here and that we had talked about to identify those seasonal shifts in the market. And again, even if we back out, we can see really how closely a market follows a seasonal trend just by backing the chart out and taking a look to see where we were at even a year ago, right? And we can see really how closely we start to follow these seasonal trends. Look at your uptrend here, right? Well, look at where we started that uptrend here from seasonality. Again, we're looking at the overall shift. And again, this seasonal trend continues here all the way up until we start to see this movement to the downside. And this is where we experience some weakness here. So when we talk about the power of adding, additional analysis to your trade strategy, this is the power here in just having even more confidence, not to be redundant in the information, but to get a whole new perspective. Because the more angles that you can look at a chart from, the better, or more accurate the narrative becomes, all right, on what to expect and what's happened previously. But of course, we're more concerned with what is expected to happen moving previously. And so what we can do is actually pull this on down, and we can actually pull a component. Since today's session is all about screening, we can actually take this seasonality and pull in seasonality into our forecast, into our screener. So if we can look at it on the chart, why not be able to scan for it, right? So if we take that seasonal forecast and put that right on into our chart here, now not only do we have the expected percentage move over the next 30 days. Now, this can be adjusted, of course, depending upon your trade style, but for a swing style, maybe looking at about 30 days here. So we're looking 30 days out to see what is the seasonal expectation here for these assets. Now, again, we have 46, so why not narrow things down slightly? Why not look at things that are expected to have a bullish or positive seasonal forecast here? So let's set this at greater than. We'll just put it at positive, that asset. All right. So it looks like you guys lost me again for a second, but I was just explaining the confidence level that we can actually look for assets that are, that do follow a seasonal pattern to either neutral, a low, or an excellent degree of certainty. And so looking for things that are excellent, we can then see that this is an asset that would typically follow a seasonal pattern with a possible 5% bullish expectation based on the next 30 days. Now, that's based on what this asset typically does during the next 30 days. And that data is based over the last 10 years. So over the last 10 years, this asset typically moves bullishly over the next 30 days. All right. And you can see that seasonal pattern as the days push out, that can push out as well. So identifying opportunities again where if it has already started to move, because that's our current conditions, where do we see potential for breakouts as well, right? All right, so we had a few questions here. Of course, Gordon, thank you. And I'm just looking back through because I saw some ticker symbols here. Okay. Oh, there it is. Sorry, I had to jump back through the chat because I asked that earlier, but let's go ahead and take a look. KR, doesn't look like we forecast for that. Keep in mind, anything that we have in VantagePoint is going to be at a minimum accuracy of 70%. Actually, on the higher end, it's 87.4% accurate. So our forecasts are incredibly accurate, and we love to uphold that standard. Let's take a look at maybe Tesla. I know that that's always a hot one. I think I saw that ticker symbol actually earlier in the chat. Yeah, okay, perfect. So if we take a look here at our market assessment, right? So we can actually see Tesla moving on up. Now, we can see that Tesla typically does follow a seasonal pattern, right? A little bit flat right here, but we are seeing still our forecast trending in the up direction. So we would actually utilize that seasonal pattern to help us, not necessarily confirm in this case, but we would be a little bit cautious of this kind of moving further. We would now know that there's possibly some increased risk. Now, again, VantagePoint's predictive indicators are still continuing to trend Tesla in the bullish direction. So nothing is telling us that this is out of a bullish trend yet. we would just be slightly cautious in this case, right? Anytime that we're using, indicators to help confirm, that's what it is. It's kind of stacking the odds in your favor one direction or the other. So let's go back to any other assets. Let me just kind of go through the chat here so we can take a look. Yes, thank you guys as we worked through some of these connection issues. I apologize today on that, but let's also let's see. There were a couple of others here that somebody had asked about, so we'll just pull these on up as we continue on. So in this case, this is AMD, so another kind of hot asset that's out there right now, right? I've gotten a lot of questions about this one here recently too, so I'm not surprised to see it in the chat. But let's take a look at our continuation trend. Anybody seeing how this seasonality really is helping to back up that trend, if you will, right? So we can see this asset typically follows that seasonal trend, but most importantly, look at your predictive moving averages. Look at that short-term crossover bullishness. Look at that medium-term crossover, especially down here when we were catching this trend again. When we see these reversals start to happen, when we saw this starting to happen back in April, a lot of our users were able to identify these trends very early on based on the predictive data, based on the predictive information, and then back that up with confirmation from seasonality as well. So a couple of different ways to scan, again, looking for different types of trends. Each of these can really be customized to the individual trader, and that's the most important part, is finding opportunities that meet your trade strategy, meet your trade setup. So this is just, 5 examples of so many different types of scans that can be customized for you within the VantagePoint software. And that's, of course, why we provide the training that we do and the education here, whether it's live on YouTube or through our VantagePoint University session. So for all of our VantagePoint University, users and VantagePoint users and family members, thank you so much for joining us. For those of you who might just be seeing VantagePoint for the first time, I hope to welcome you guys to the family very soon. So don't forget to like and subscribe. And whether you're a user or you're just seeing this for the first time, it was great to have you in the session today. And I hope you learned at least a couple of things that can help you along your trade journey. So have a great day, everybody.